Hello, and sorry. Sweet. Okay, we're live. Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Tales from a Wanderer. I am, as always, Oliver, your host, professional wilderness guide, and all-round outdoors enthusiast. Today, as I said last week, we'll be talking a little bit about some more skiing, actually, which is, as I said last week, kind of what me and my friend were doing over the winter. We were trying to get a full ski season in while also, you know, going to school and being athletes. So, like I said last week, the first story that I have is basically us trying to chase a powder day on the East Coast, which is something that rarely happens if you are a skier. A powder day, especially on the East Coast, is very, very rare. A powder day in general is very rare. But what it is basically is when a lot of snow will fall, like 3, 4 feet maybe, right? And you get all the snow, but they don't groom any of the trails. So it's not like compacted or anything like that. It's like very soft, very fluffy snow, and you kind of just like surf almost through it. Oh, it's wonderful. It's the best thing ever. And up until this season, I had never really experienced it because I had mostly skied kind of classic East Coast skiing, which is a lot of ice and not that steep of terrain. Basically, it's very just icy in general. So the whole kind of goal for me for this kind of trip or this kind of adventure was to try and find basically powder. Because I wanted to ski it really badly, and me and my friend were like, okay, this is like the main goal of the season, basically. So throughout kind of the whole season, that's what we were kind of working on and looking forward to. Basically, we were constantly trying, okay, let's check the weather report. Okay, it looks like we're gonna get a snowstorm. Okay, sweet. All right, we gotta be up here at this time to go skiing, and it's gonna be great. So that was kind of the idea when we went up to Gore in northern Vermont. We had seen that they had gotten basically snow the night before, so we drove up, stayed. Well, we drove up, right? And classic, in of course, classic style, I believe it was this trip, but basically what happened was we drove up and we stayed in a tiny little hotel, motel kind of thing, basically. But we were there and we picked up the key from the front desk and we were going to the room, and me and my roommate, or me and my friend, we were going to the room, and our room number was 215. So this is important. Room number was 215, right? Easy to remember. And we accidentally, right? It was late at night, it was cold out. We accidentally walked up to 216. Right? No big deal, right? I didn't notice though. I was carrying my bags and my snowboard, and so I didn't really notice. And then my friend unlocks 216's door, right? Oh, no big deal. Like I started to go in. And we started to go in, and there's this like kid, this like ski racer just sitting there. And we kind of, all of us kind of just stopped for a second, like all three of us, the ski racer on the bed and my friend first, and we all kind of stopped for a second. We were like, wait, hang on. This is our, oh no, this is your room. And I kind of backed up a little bit and I was like, this is 216. And so we were like, oh, so sorry, like whatever, and closed the door. But we we kind of sat in the hallway for a second, just kind of thinking like, wait, if multiple keys unlock the room doors, like how safe are we really in this hotel? You know, probably not that safe. I mean, it was super cheap, which was great, but it was clear that we were not that safe there. So that was that was kind of the start of the adventure, and we were like, it'll be fine. Like we're trying to chase some powder, like trying to chase some snow, basically. But this poor kid, I mean, he gave us this wide-eyed look of like, I mean, he could have been more than 16 maybe. Gave us this wide-eyed look of like, you can unlock my room? So it was very funny. Classic mishap, from everything from sleeping in the car to unlocking someone else's room. So it was very funny, and eventually we deadbolted our room that night. But so that night, we slept with one eye open basically that night, which was very funny. But the next morning we woke up and they had gotten a lot of snow. They had gotten, I want to say, almost 4 feet of snow, which was great for us. I mean, they must have gotten a ton of snow. So we headed to the mountain, and it was really early. It was like 7:30 because the chair started spinning at like 8. So we wanted to be there for like first chair, right? I think we were on fifth chair probably, but we we basically, that was the whole, like, we had to be there early, right? Like, there was no one in, I mean, no one in the parking lot, right? No one in the parking lot. And we basically said to each other, like, okay, we're not going to stop for food. Like, just bring all the food you want with you, bring all the water, like, whatever. We're not going to stop for food. And in the morning, right, we stepped out of the car. I mean, it was cold, cold. Not super cold, as the next story will show, but it was pretty cold out. It was probably 15 to 20 degrees out. So, I'm bundled up and I'm warm, and so I clip, I mean, basically the whole, like, when you're, especially when you're skiing in powder, like, snow is just going everywhere. I mean, it goes under your jacket and into your snow pants, and so I kind of closed all my vents, and I had my powder skirt zipped up. And so I basically excuse me. Basically both of us got into the chair and we were like, "Oh, yes." So excited. Freezing cold on the chair. I was so cold on the chair. It was unbelievable. I was shivering up to the top, and then, I mean, we were the first couple of people at the top, and we were like, "Okay, we got to choose our run correctly, right? Because they haven't groomed some of this, and it's going to be great. It's going to be nice." And I mean, this first run that we did was immaculate. It was great. It just there was, like, it was nice and soft on the main trail, and then you kinda popped off into the ditch, and it was like this perfectly, like, soft powder, basically. I mean, it was perfect, perfect powder. And so we're just, like, having fun, playing, right, and going down, and we make it to the bottom, we're like, "Alright, again." Like, we're definitely not eating now, like, the snow's running great. Life is good, right? And so we were maybe 4 runs in, and we wanted to try this kind of, woods, kinda off the beaten path kinda trail. So, all of a sudden, my friend who's on skis, he dropped off the left side of this, like, trail and down into this kinda ravine. If you know kinda telephone poles, that's kinda what it looked like. It kinda dropped off into that. And so I was like, "Oh, sweet, like, untouched powder, like, alright, let's do this." So I dropped off too, and then he kinda disappeared around the corner, and I was like, "Uh-oh." Right? Like, I've lost him, right? And so I kinda weaved around this corner under a tree. I remember distinctly ducking under this tree branch, right? And, like, coming up, and he was gone, just, like, disappeared. I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, I guess I'll just keep going." Like, I could see his tracks, obviously. So I keep following his tracks. There's, like, brambles, right? I keep following his tracks. And, a skier is considerably faster than a snowboarder. So I keep following his tracks, and so I kinda, there's, like, a sharp left turn, right? And he obviously wanted to get back onto the main trail. And, I'm about to take this sharp left turn, but it's just a drop. It's like a 6 foot, 7 foot drop onto the main trail. And I, like, stop just in time, and I kinda look over the edge, and he's lying there, and he's got, like, his skis are all tangled in each other, and he's just looking back up at me, and he's like, yeah, forgot there was a there's a small cliff here." "Yeah, you think?" And so, the main trail was groomed, but then this lip that was covered in snow was not at all groomed. So when he basically plunged in, I mean, he was up to, like, his thighs in this deep, deep powdery snow. So I was like, "Well, I'm lucky I stopped," right? 'Cause, that could have been not so great. So, eventually he finally gets out. I don't know how he managed it, but he kinda, like, crawled up, and I was like, "Oh, I got this. No problem. I know now." So I kinda make a little hop, right? A little hop off the snowbank, and I hit I mean, I was so close to it. I hit just the very lip, the very edge of the snowbank, and just fell, like, completely backwards into it, and I'm, like, fully in the snow now. I was like, "Ah, so close," and so both of us were laughing. It was very funny because I had so much confidence that I would make it, and I did not make it. I didn't make it at all. But we just kinda kept skiing and skiing and in this I mean, on the main trail and then dip off into the powdery stuff and then back onto the main trail, and it was very, like, very fun, very very poppy, I guess you'd call it. Great snow, incredible snow. And I mean, it was, like, up to my knees. Oh, it was great, it was great. But, you're skiing and you're using your kinda your quads a lot, right? So we're kinda skiing and skiing and skiing, and we must have done, like, 10 trips, and I was sweating, like, drenched in sweat at this point, sweating head to toe, right? And, I was, like, unzipping all my vents again, and then, you get onto the chairlift, and you're cold again, and you unzip all your vents again, I'm cold again. S Everlasting cycle of just like, I'm hot. Oh, actually, I'm cold. Oh, I'm hot. Actually, I'm cold again." So it was very funny just trying to find that perfect balance, but I had never skied it before, so I didn't really know, like, how I would layer or how I would react, and it's very warm. It was very hot 'cause I mean, the sun broke through. I mean, it was basically a bluebird day. I mean, perfect sun, blue skies. Um, it was perfect by the end of the day, and, basically, we were just like, "Okay, we can." I mean, it started to warm up, and so we got hot, and we were like, "Whatever, we don't care. Keep skiing for, like, as long as possible," basically. So, we wanted to kind of this was maybe a little bit later in the afternoon, but we wanted to kind of, transition over to the kind of northern side of the mountain, I guess you'd call it. Um, we were hoping for a little more, a little more powder, right? Because we pretty much tapped out the stuff that we had over on more of the southern side, I guess you'd call it. But the traverse over there is quite difficult for someone on a snowboard, right? So we were coming down the same trail we were kind of doing all morning, right? Coming down the same trail, and the traverse over was so like just the bare minimum of gradient to keep people going. And so my friend was skiing, right? He could move independently, and I was basically stuck on my board because I can't do much. So just trying to traverse that, I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna unclip it and we'll just walk it. So we were walking and walking, and then we kind of found like this kind of telephone pole wires kind of cut across the trail and cut this wide swath, and we were like, oh, and this is pretty nice. It looks pretty deep. It was untouched, and so we started walking, walking the telephone wire, and it was beautiful powder, and we were hoping to get up and over this ridge and then kind of come back down, and then we would basically be able to rejoin with the main trail, but it would be a little bit steeper, we were hoping. So we were hiking and walking, and so finally we get to the top of this hill, and we're kind of hoping, I clip in and I start to go down and getting like a lot of I got like a lot of speed really fast. I was like, okay, cool. And you can't really stop in powder because you don't have an edge really. So there's no edge to your powder. So you can't really stop. You can only hope to stop, really. So it's going, 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 and my friend's in front of me, and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna cut onto the main trail." Right? He kind of looks back and like points left, and so we cut into the trees, right? And I'm like dodging around trees, and I just barely miss one. I'm like, "Whew, okay, finally we're out." And we kind of glide out onto this like perfectly flat layer, and then it drops off again like a little cliff, and then there's the trail, and we're gliding across this top layer, and I'm like, I wonder what this is exactly, right? Like this feels kind of strange, and all of a sudden it kind of goes like crack, like it kind of has this like wobbly kind of cracking effect like ice does. And I kind of look at my friend and I'm like, yeah, this is a lake. Yeah, this is a frozen lake. We gotta get out. This is a frozen lake. Quick run. So I kind of like half shuffle, half like waddle off this lake, drop off the other side onto the trail. We later found out that it was kind of like a half gravel, half lake kind of thing. But it was in the moment, I was like, I'm definitely going through the ice here. This isn't good. But we we get out of there and we drop back onto the main trail and we're still going, and he's kind of in front of me. So I'm just chilling, hanging back, and there's this little like lip down once again, like not really a cliff, but a little lip down where two trails merge. Basically create a V, and in the middle is like still powdery snow. So I was like, oh sweet, I'm gonna hit this. I'm gonna jump into it basically, right? And so I kind of jumped, right? You kind of lift up and I kind of jumped into it, but I twisted weirdly in the air and trying to stop, basically trying to stop on my toe edge, kind of facing uphill, and I caught my back edge, and I kind of just like head over heeled, like somersaulted down the rest of the down the rest of the thing, and I kind of stop and I look up. I'm like, oh wow, that really hurt. But my friend in front of me hadn't seen anything, but the 2 guys in front of us on the lift line had kinda gone, "Ooh," like, the classic, like, someone had fallen and it hadn't been good kinda noise, and they had made that, and he had turned around, and I had just been kinda completely starfished on my back. Um, I was carrying, like, my nice camera and a camcorder for the documentary, and so I was like, "Oh, I've broken it for sure. I've broken my I've broken my camera for sure, like, it's gonna be in a million pieces." And I'm, like, gingerly skiing back down to the lift line, and I'm like, "Oh, that really hurt." Like, I just flipped over myself, like, that was terrible. Finally get to the end of the lift line, and my friend is like, "Oh, did you just fall?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I did." I'm, like, holding my hip. Oh, it hurt so much. It was unbelievable. But, I was kinda, like, holding my hip, and I kinda got up gingerly, and I unclipped my binding, and I look in my bag, and surprisingly, I was so surprised by this, but I hadn't cracked my camera at all. I hadn't even, like, done anything to it, and the camcorder was okay too, so I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like, all the footage we just shot is fine. And then kind of for the rest of the day there, we just kind of played in the snow. I mean, we had some great runs. There was some sweet glades, which are kind of um, tree runs. I mean, they were great, nice and powdery. So I was going through those, and by the end of the day, we were just like we were done. I mean, this was a Sunday, so we still had school tomorrow, right? And so it must have been like 5 maybe, and we were like, "Okay, we gotta go back." Like, I'm too tired to drive anymore, and so, you know, we had to drive back. But that was one of the last big trips we took of the season, just because, eventually we'd get back into the full weeks of rowing and back into the sport, and so that was kind of the last big trip that we did, but it was definitely, definitely worth it because we had some great powder, some great lines, and it was great. I mean, there was no other way to describe it. It was perfect and got some sweet footage from there as well. But that was kind of us chasing kind of the last powder day of, I believe it was February. That was kind of the last powder day in February that we were hoping to get. And from there, the second story that I have was kind of the last trip that we did, if I remember correctly. And I don't remember to which mountain. It might have been Cannon, but don't quote me on that. But this was the last big trip we took, and it was February, and so it was kind of end of February, and it should have been no, it was February 13th. I remember that. And it should have been getting warmer, but it was not getting warmer at all. So, kind of the backstory to it, we had driven up and we had stayed kind of at my friend's parents' friends, connections kind of house, cabin there. A beautiful place, beautiful house, really nice. And so we had kind of just like chilled there, right? And then got up the next morning really early again. We want to be first in line. Gonna be great. And we got up the next morning, and I mean, it was cold. It was cold, cold. I believe it was -10. If the thermometer was working, which I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But I mean, it was freezing, freezing, freezing. Um, and so that meant all the layers, right? Like I was wearing thermal and a puffy and like more thermal and then a sweatshirt on top. And so basically I was wearing all my layers I could possibly fit. And then I put my hood up and zipped up my jacket all the way. So it's just my goggles sticking out. But it was unbelievably cold. And this is one of those not so fun skiing days. Get to the mountain, it's -5. Uh, so we were like, this is like kind of cool. Like, I don't know how many laps we're gonna get in. Like, usually you get pretty warm while skiing. No, all my vents were closed. Everything was closed. So we kind of continue. We get in line, and I'm still shivering basically. Get in line and do kind of our first couple of laps. And what we were hoping for with the snow report was that it kind of be groomed, but it kind of be rolling. So it'd be like a little bit flaky, like not so hard. And we start going down this first trail, and it's just ice. Like it's just ice. Like I try to stop myself on an edge, and it's just like all the way down the mountain. Oh man, like come on, like we just gotten off of that sweet gore powder day, and now we were back to like the classic New England ice and snowstorm, and it just wasn't very fun. So we kept going, and the wind started to pick up, and I mean it dropped again. It was probably -10, and it started to so any moisture that was coming off of us, like moisture was coming through my jacket, because I have this nice like Gore-Tex jacket, and so it breathes really well. So that means basically the moisture is just gonna come out of it. So the moisture was just like, I mean, seeping out of this jacket, just like coming out of this jacket, and then it would freeze. So I'd like move my arms, and like sheets of ice would fall off of them. And then when we were sitting on the chair, like the wind was coming in, and then like the your thighs would do it as well, like sheets of ice just created on your thighs as well. I mean, it was the strangest thing. I don't think I've skied in temperatures. I hope never to ski in temperatures that cold again, but it was just brutally, brutally cold. And so we were skiing. I mean, the only thing that saved us probably was it was only a two-person chair. So me and my roommate, I mean, we were basically butt to butt. Um, So, that was basically the only thing that saved us. Brutally, brutally cold conditions, but we were still kind of having fun. Me and my friend he loves moguls more than anything else. Loves moguls. Those kind of snow. I kind of explained them in last week's podcast, but those snow divots that are created. I mean, for me, terrible. Hate them with a passion. For him, best thing ever. So we just kept lapping this trail. I mean, it wasn't in the sun. It was cold. The wind was coming right up it. And it was freezing, and it was mogully. So I'm like trying to go down and like stopping and like readjusting. I'm doing these like hard flick turns to get around the moguls, and I got another one, and I get to the bottom, be like out of breath, like, okay, okay, where are we going next? He's like, that was great. We should do it again. I'm like, okay, all right, let's go again then. But that was, I mean, it was so so cold, but kind of fun at the same time, because like in the misery we were also having fun. So we were basically just excited to be out there, just excited to be able to experience whatever, right? Even though it was cold, and even though we were slightly miserable, you know it was super fun. But that was probably one of the coldest days that we had, but we also had another very, very cold day when we were in, Vermont, but much farther north. It was like -5 again, or it was probably like 10 to 5 maybe. And, we were loading up the car, and I was in the back of my mind, I was just thinking, "Is the car gonna start?" Because we were, like, hoping to get to the mountain, and we were checking out a hotel, and, all we were hoping was that his car would start. Excuse me. Um, all we were hoping was that his car would start because, like, cars don't necessarily like 5 degrees, like, it's not very fun for them. So, we were sitting in the car and freezing as always, of course. Sitting in the car and he kinda turns it on and go, "Guh, guh, 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 guh," dies, and then he tries again, "Guh, guh, guh, guh," dies. And but then when he finally started it, it sounded like an old, like, diesel motor trying to, like, start up. It's like, "Oh." We're like, "Okay, alright, so, we're just gonna leave it running for a little bit, and we're gonna hope that it stays on." But this second trip, which was in January, so it was cold again, uh, conditions were so much better, which is why in February we were hoping for better conditions, but no one was out there because it was cold. And so we basically had the mountains to ourselves kind of deal. I mean, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 400 people, 500 people there, which is like nothing for a big resort really. So we were there and it was nice and calm and quiet, and the trails were all, like, nicely groomed basically at that time before kinda the hordes of people kinda got to them, and so no moguls on them, beautiful groomers, uh, so we were kinda just chilling, going fast, right? Like, sometimes, like, the powder is fun, right? But you kinda have to go slow and you kinda have to be paying attention. But for this mountain, we were just bombing everything. I mean, just going like full speed. It was like icy at some point, so you'd go from kind of this like nicely groomed snow to just like ice and then back to snow and then ice and then back to snow. So it's kind of this very funny this very, very funny kind of trying to stay up afloat or upright basically as you're just kind of flying down these slopes. So much fun. And so, that day we did probably 15 laps at least. We were just going and even though we were cold again, we were just like, okay, whatever, we're just gonna have fun. Right? Because like we don't get to get out that much. Like now, of course, like semester's ending and we don't get to get out that much. But we were basically just, okay, we're just gonna send it. Basically, we're just gonna send it, and it should be okay. I mean, in the end, it was. We were a little bit cold, and in the car, I flipped on the seat heater, the seat warmer, which was really really nice to have after sitting on a cold, like you know, basically a cold oh, man. Lift chair, wow. After sitting on a cold lift chair for the whole day, having a nice warm seat car to go in was great, but that's kind of what it's like sometimes, you're trying to chase adventure and, adventure sometimes chases you a little bit. But, those are the 2 stories that I have for today. Of course, like I said last week, if you're interested kind of in more of it, more of the story, more of our funny fails, more of our, incompetence at times, and more of the skiing, there is going to be a documentary about me and my roommate. It's gonna be called The Escapist. You can pretty much find it I don't know when when it'll be up necessarily, but it's going to be basically produced by Project 42 Media, which is a media company I run. And then it'll be go up on that website. So if you're interested in more of our shenanigans and more of our idiot selves, basically, you should head over and check out that documentary. But for next week, we'll head back up to Canada during warmer days, of course. and talk about some of my participants on the trips as I was leading up there. We'll talk about probably the clumsiest man alive, and then we'll also talk about some interesting characters that I had for some of my participants up there. So, as always, I'm Oliver Sanchez with Tales from a Wanderer.